hearing someone who has gone through that whole thought process during COVID and kind of the perspectives that he's gotten since then. And this is, of course, the person we introduced before, Chris Chow.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
So understanding that we're really appreciative that you've taken this time, you've got a family and you've got a very busy job, and you've taken this time to share your journey with us. And we know that, tonight is not about you, but we really appreciate you sharing it to help us think about our journey. So as a quick introduction, Chris, give us 2 quick sentences to describe who you are so people know.
In a nutshell, I'm a husband, a father, work in financial services. I am introverted, as someone's mentioned. I just love pretty much spending time with family, quality time with my family, my wife, my daughter. I'm a tea person. I love coffee. I think that's like more than 2 sentences, but everything in a nutshell there.
Yeah, I heard you like tea and coffee, so I'll just summarize, you like caffeine. Okay, so thanks for that. And we can pick out the best in us. So this is not really a surprise to you, Chris, but I'm going to ask you this anyway. How would your wife describe you? Just to be a bit more awesome in this.
I will be really honest tonight. I think workaholic will come to mind. Annoying. I think just tunnel visioned, but also very dedicated, very caring. I try my best, and she knows I think I really try to do better every day and everything, and be a better leader and be a better father every day. I think all those things are probably at the top of my mind. There's probably heaps more words, but I'd say that.
Your honesty, really appreciate that. And not that I don't believe you, but I did phone a friend before tonight just to verify your accounts. We just heard from you the whole night. So from a very reliable account, he says, Chris Chow, always unable to conceal his grin, has a rugged yet sharp exterior, works hard in the finance industry. Some may describe him as a workaholic, but he's actually a softy nerd inside, enjoying watercolors and magic cards. Very.
Wow. Okay, that's spot on. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. So, before we get into kind of the interview section with Chris, I just want to say that we do have a Q&A again at the end of tonight. So if you have any questions related to Chris sharing or Pete sharing, please message admin. That will be anonymous. We'll share your questions anonymously. So please, you'll feel safe to do so. So Chris, okay, so on this topic of a fresh start, I think it only makes sense for us to understand how you have experienced COVID. So what has been the darkest moments for you during COVID?
Whoa. Great first question. I think to give a bit of insight into my journey, so I work in financial services at a corporate firm, and I think one of the main tenets of my job is really building relationship with business owners, particularly business owners in a very affluent region of New South Wales. And a lot of my year has really just been driving those relationships, making those networks, connections, numbers, revenue, profits, etc. And so that night when Scott Morrison announced on the news that there's going to be finance support that's government-backed, and just the state of the economy where everything was heading, it was almost like we were seeing everything in slow motion unfold. We were getting a lot of my businesses reach out to me saying They were already seeing supply disruptions with stock, cash flow issues, just really concerns about what the year would look like from a really kind of like person-to-person level. And from that point, I got really, really scared because a lot of my work has really been to look after and help these customers as much as I can. And so the ensuing weeks from that was really a massive bottleneck of just hundreds of emails and customers and calls every single day, 15-hour working days. I remember just stopping work at 1 or 2 a.m. because my wife would get so angry at me working so hard. But it was really that frantic where a lot of businesses really needed help. And I think the darkest moment, to answer your question, Grace, was having conversations where I couldn't do anything about it. And I'd feel completely helpless. And some of these people I've known for years. I know the names of their children, their pets, which park they go to, like just small crazy stuff like that. And then seeing them get laid off and things of that nature. It was a very confronting period for me, and but I think everybody felt the same in that space. We just knew we just had to keep going and do what we could.
Yeah. So in your line of work, what I'm hearing is that you saw kind of the devastation and how people's livelihoods were destroyed. You saw how real that was, and you kind of felt the helplessness that this is just kind of, in a way, the cards that were dealt to them and to you. And I think in some sense we can all relate that we observe and we also feel, in some sense, the helplessness and the lack of control we have. So I guess that would have been quite challenging, perhaps for some of your worldviews or the perspective that you had. So perhaps you can share a little bit about how you as a person has changed before COVID and the Chris Chow that we see here tonight.
I think it's interesting. We started off with, I love that survey that we did. And one of the biggest things that really came about was just changing in perspectives, focusing more on family and community. I think pre-COVID, I was really just set on getting my job done and getting a job really, really well. And I think maybe some of us here from first, second or third generation Asian migrants, and we've seen our parents really drive that when we grew up. I think when I spoke with you, Grace, as well during the weekend, I think some people hardly had time with their parents at all because they were out there working really hard, long hours. And so I think I naturally really just picked that up and adopted that as part of my identity and who I was. And so pre-COVID, it was just really about all numbers. It was about the profits, about the bonus, about really trying to be that provider. And in a sense, I think it was not until COVID happened that I realized that, God, sometimes I have more relationship with my own customers than my own family. And this is just me being just really frank and honest at this point. And it made me feel a really big push to try and understand why and where and what the focus was and the prioritization that needs to happen on a personal level. And I think, look, I have to say one of the biggest things that got me through this period was my wife and my daughter and my community of the other fathers who I connected with during this time, because it was just really hard thing to talk about elsewhere, especially, amongst your colleagues, because we all knew we were going through the same thing. But I'd say that the Chris Chow now here tonight is probably less focused on the numbers and the future and the direction and more focused about story time, right? The hugs, the kisses, the hot teas in front of Peppa Pig, and just laughing at how crazy stupid the show is. But yeah, I'd say that's probably where things are at now.
Wow. Yeah, that's really honest of you to share. I'm really grateful for that. You know, sometimes it's not the most pleasant experience to be real with the self, but it sounded like through this experience, you had come to the realization that there were things that your life was driven in one direction, which was life, money, career, being able to support yourself. And while that's not bad, that wasn't in a way that was balanced or loving, perhaps from the perspective of your wife. And that really changed the way that you want to go forward. So I guess another question from me is, you know, for how did you come to be real with yourself? Because I guess that value of providing and that value of wanting to climb a career or just to have security in life, it's not that you're giving up your job, but you are making a shift in your perspective and in your focus. And sometimes it's really hard to be real, to acknowledge that and to take the steps. So yeah, what helped you? What pushed you to take the steps? Yeah.
Wow, that's a loaded question. I think what I had to really acknowledge every day, it was Groundhog Day of people being real to me about their lives. And what that means is some customers would just tell me that they wouldn't have food on their plate that night. Or some customers would tell me about how they're just so stuck in debt. They just don't find a way out. And a lot of that comes with just raw emotion, tears, screaming, anger. And I think it's so crazy how just living every single day exposed to that just almost broke it in me to be real myself. And just realize, hang on a second, this is like I really kind of understood the mask I was wearing at that point. And I think the reality also sets in when, I mean, you've got that breakout moment, but you've also got a place of healing as well, and a space for me to be kind to myself and to validate and to acknowledge what I was going through. And that didn't come easy because, as I mentioned, it's really hard to talk about these kind of things. But I would also just give credit to Pete Coe and all the fathers that I've been having the Bible study group with, and how we can actually be very real in that space for me to really start living it out. So, yeah, it was a combination of things, but I'd say.
Yeah, that's something that I'm very intrigued by as well, because, you know, in this time of lockdown, even in the mentee survey we did before, like, things that people miss the most were social relationships. But it sounded like during this, you made an extra effort to be in community. So, I mean, for those who don't really know what you mean by community or what you mean by a group of fathers sharing, can you maybe just share quickly about what made that community different or safe, and that you could.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, no matter who you are and whoever's listening to this, and if you're tuning in and just really curious, I think you just need people who brings you safety. And I think especially in the world we live in now, there is just so much emotion. There's just so much deceit, fake news, like panic buying. You hear hypes come and go, get into the stock market, Bitcoin and things of that nature. I think sometimes you just need I think people who really listen for the point of listening, who allow you to be yourself, and whether that just be your brokenness or who you are, and I'm also very lucky as well that I have people who provide me that space and acknowledge, yeah, you know what, that sounds really bad, but really like kind of like not really try to fix you. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to start talking about in this day and age, because I think we miss all of that through, I don't know, like social media or trying to compete against who has the better profile picture or things of that nature. It's having the real conversations, and I think even tonight, like this story is not my story. I think it's our story, and I think at the end of the day, if we can all leave this Zoom conversation and start asking ourselves these questions and start engaging the people that we trust, to start thinking, oh my God, this is how I feel. I actually haven't expressed it or processed it at all. I think that's really the value I want to drive tonight.
Thanks, Chris. And it is really our hope and our aim for tonight. At SWEC, we really value walking with each other through life, especially through COVID. And you heard a little bit about how Chris really was able to explore these deeper issues that are so valuable to him. Like, it pivoted his life to what he really values now, which is relationships and family and community. And so tonight is another one of those nights. So, we will have Q&A at the end of tonight, and I would really encourage you to be as honest and as vulnerable as you are comfortable to be. And if there are people that you're more comfortable to speak with, then message admin. You can just have your own breakout room and to start having those, honest and real conversations with people you trust. Thank you so much, Chris, for sharing that. And I think that really kicked us off to think about our own lives. So we are actually going to have another quick session where Peter's going to share with us a short message. And again, throughout all of that, if you have any questions, please message admin. Or if you have any breakout room preferences, please also message admin. So I'll hand it over to Pete.
Great, thank you. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us tonight. And I don't know how you went with that last Menti question. I found it hard to know what to write, but hopefully it sounds like people are thinking deeply, and it sounds like people are thinking deeply about what kind of things you'd like to do differently. I guess what we don't want as we think about life after COVID and any kind of resolutions that we make, we really don't want it to be like New Year's resolutions, right? You know, the ones that you make every New Year's Eve and it only lasts for about a month. But realistically, it's hard, right? When you have a resolution to stick to it. And even now, you might have gone into COVID the first month thinking, I'm going to do things differently. But now, if you're like me, life as lockdown is easing, it's beginning to get busy already. And it's so easy for those desires to pursue the more important things, whatever they are to you. It's very easy for them to get, crowded out by the demands of every day. I don't know if that's happening to you. It's certainly happening to me. So, how can we actually make a fresh start and follow through with it? Tonight I want to kind of spend about less than 10 minutes. I just want to share another short snippet from the life of Jesus and the way he interacts with people. And if you were with us last time, you remember I did this. Now you don't have to be a Christian. You don't even have to believe everything from the Bible to appreciate that Jesus might have some answers to life's big questions. At least people have been thinking that for the last over 2,000 years. So I want to look at a really short episode in the Bible where Jesus interacts with two sisters, friends of his, and both of them had vastly different ideas about what's important. Now, if you were with us last time at the Life After COVID conversations, you might actually remember a couple of these characters because they were the same sisters of Lazarus that we looked at last time. So let me just share screen with you. And I just want to read out a few verses from a passage from Luke's biography of Jesus. And have a look there. It says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to Jesus and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what's better, and it will not be taken away from her. Now, I don't know if you've read that before, even if you haven't, it's pretty simple little episode, isn't it? In some ways, the moral of the story is kind of easy to understand. We've got two sisters, they prioritize different things. You got Martha, she's prioritizing being busy, cleaning, cooking, playing host, getting things ready for Jesus. Then you've got Mary, the other sister, and she's prioritizing relationship, right? Intimacy, friendship, sitting at Jesus' feet. And now we get that, right? A lot of us talked about the importance of relationships, especially COVID has made us realize how important relationships are. We know that no one on their deathbed wishes that they had worked more. Yeah, no one on their deathbed wishes they had worked more. Plenty wish they had spent more time with friends and parents and kids and spouses. So that seems like it's the moral of the story, simple enough. Well, that is part of it, but I'd kind of like us to look a little bit closer and see what might be driving Martha and Mary, because that might have some insight into us and our psychology as well. And maybe not to be too quick to judge Martha. You see, what I mean is this. Every time I ask people when they read this story, who do they identify with in this story? Who do they sympathize? Out of Martha and Mary, who do you identify with most? Do you know what? The majority of people actually say they identify with Martha most. The one who's busy running around doing stuff, who's complaining that Mary's not helping. And it's especially the oldest siblings. I don't know how many of your oldest brothers and sisters, you especially identify with Martha, don't you? Because who hasn't felt how she's felt? So remember those of you who used to do group assignments, whether in high school or university or even group projects at work, don't you hate being the one that has to keep everything together while everyone else is slacking off? Yeah, you felt that. That's how Martha felt. And you got to remember, this was Martha and Mary's home, and there's certain expectations, aren't there, of the hostess, especially when the honored guest is someone like Jesus. Now, they come from an honor, shame, face society like the one that I come from, like the one that many of you come from. And so you can understand that Martha wanted to do her best to make it a great dinner party. She wanted to make Jesus happy. I mean, this is Jesus after all, okay? This is Jesus. And then she's got this sister Mary who was at least, the very least, she's a ready helper, if not actually a co-host. So what she expects Mary to do is actually pretty reasonable. We sympathize with Martha. We sympathize with her frustration at Mary. And yet there's a twist in the story, isn't there? Martha is not the one that Jesus commends, but actually Mary. Now, why is that? Well, I'd like us to think a little bit about what might be behind Martha's busyness, and not just busyness, her fretfulness, her anxiety. What's behind it? Well, I want to suggest to you it's this. Martha assumes something. She assumes that in order to please Jesus, she needed to get busy as a host. She needed to perform her duty as a host. It was in order to please Jesus. Now, we'll see why that might be wrong in a moment. But for now, let's just think about that. She wanted to please Jesus. And that's what made her all busy and worried and anxious and fretful. Now, if we're honest with ourselves, think about this. How much of our mixed up priorities in life are driven by the need to please others? I mean, is that true of you? It's true of me. How many of you did university degrees or pursued careers you wouldn't have chosen for yourself, except that your parents or your peers or society pressured you to do that? All right? in the end, we can all be living for other people's approval, right? We all want and need approval from those around us, parents, peers, society. In order to do that, our desires and priorities are shaped by that, by the desire for approval. And in the end, that is what keeps us like hamsters in the hamster wheel. Sometimes we feel we're so trapped, we can't get off because of all these things that are expected of us, all this lifestyle that we're supposed to have as we look around us. And all those really important things like relationships get suffocated and choked out. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I hope you see Martha. Don't be too quick to judge her. Martha's a lot like us, or we're a lot like Martha. She lives by other people's expectations of her. She feels she needs to perform in order to please. And you see what she does is she carries that into her relationship with God, right? She thinks that's what Jesus would want. This is what God would want. Now, we get that too, don't we? How many of us are religious for the same reason? You're trying to please God. You're trying to make him happy. So you do all you think is expected of you. You get busy being religious. You go to church. You be good. You be devout. Or you think you should and you feel guilty when you don't. See, our view of Jesus is often the same as Martha's as well. And that really is the big problem. Because that's not the way we relate to Jesus. Martha actually, and we, have Jesus all wrong. I don't know if you remember Jesus' words. I love how it cuts through everything. He says to her, Martha, Martha, in her fretfulness, he says to her, Martha, Martha, take it easy. You're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed. Indeed, only one. Mary has chosen what's better, and it'll not be taken away from her. See what Jesus is saying? Jesus is saying, Martha, I don't need your service. I didn't ask for your busyness. And even more than that, he's saying, Martha, you don't need to perform in order to please me. Right? You don't need to do this to please me. Instead, the right posture is actually Mary's. She sat at Jesus' feet listening. This is a posture of someone who feels completely accepted already. That's Mary. She doesn't feel like she needs to please Jesus. She knows she is accepted by Jesus already and she's here to enjoy him. You see, you need to know the God of the Bible isn't that distant God whom we have to make happy with our prayers, our sacrifice, or our service. Right? The Martha view of God is actually wrong. Instead, the God of the Bible is a different God. He is the God who seeks not performance but intimacy. Right? God doesn't need our service or sacrifice in order to please him. And the reason is because, the God of the Bible, he came to serve and sacrifice for us so that we would please him for all eternity. Right? God turns the table on us. You got to know, when God became a man in Jesus, he came to serve us. He came to sacrifice himself for us. Jesus dying on the cross is to overcome the great barrier of sin that stands between us and our God. He died as a sacrifice and as a substitute. And he did it so that everything that's needed for us to have his approval and enjoy relationship with him is already done for us. We don't need to do anything. It's done. And here's the thing. You don't need to perform in order to please God, not the God of the Bible. He did it all for you. So that if you're in a relationship with him by trusting in Jesus, you already please him. Right? You already please him fully and completely and eternally. Now, when you realize that, you lay down your tea towels and you sit at his feet and enjoy him instead. You go from being a Martha to a Mary. Now, I said I'd keep this short. Now I'm out of time. Feel free to ask questions, but let me just end with this. I want to say this. If you understand this simple story, what's going on behind the scenes, Jesus, Mary, and Martha, if you have this kind of relationship with your Creator, it changes everything. It really does. You suddenly feel freed. You become freed by this love and acceptance that God has for you unconditionally. You're free to no longer have to live by a performance mentality. You can live in a relationship mentality. You can live for what's most important. And it really does change everything. So here's the thing. If, as part of your Life After COVID Fresh Start, if you want to find out more about Jesus or relationship with Jesus, or maybe you used to be connected to Jesus in church, but you've kind of left that for a long time, you want to reconnect, please let us know. because that would be a fantastic thing to explore in your fresh start. And we would love to help you do that. In a moment after Q&A, we're actually going to ask you to fill in some quick feedback forms. And if that's you, just indicate to us on the feedback forms and we'll get connected with you. All right, enough from me. Remember to send in your questions and we'll get Grace to begin asking some of them. Some of them hopefully is addressed at Chris. But you have any questions for me, please send it through to admin as well. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Pete. That's quite a number of things to think about. It was very clear. And so if you have any questions, for Chris or for Pete, please message them to admin. So to kick us off, we do have a few questions. Maybe I'll ask one for Chris, actually. So one of them said, where did you seek and provide comfort and security when your clients were really rattled by what was happening to their jobs and businesses?
I think what I had to do, and look, I know that there are a lot of people in this same situation. I had to actually remove myself from the situation, and I had to disconnect and unlearn to be so involved and emotionally invested. And look, at the end of the day, that really was the hardest part for me. And so it was and the only way I had to really do that was to form newer and better connections, more closer connections with other people. I'm very lucky as well. It's great that we've got Grace here hosting, but I'm actually really like he's so Grace's fiance is my best friend, and we catch up every week, and it's just one of the greatest things. It's and I think when you have a situation when you're so deeply submerged in something, you have to really kind of ground yourself and bring yourself back to normality and ask the questions of who you are and what do you enjoy and what is something kind that you would do for yourself so that you're happier.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thank you for that. I have a question. Perhaps that's for Pete, and based on what you've shared. So one of the question was, you mentioned that, a relationship with Jesus will, free you to have a life that you don't need to perform to kind of, to have what's important in life. So this person asked, what if I already feel freed to live for and enjoy what's most important in life without a relationship with Jesus? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. What if I already feel free to live for and enjoy what's most important in life without a relationship with Jesus? A couple of things. I think the first thing I'd say is, again, this is obviously the perspective of someone who's very biased and who's a Christian, a follower of Jesus. But if there is a God who created you, and if he is the God who created you to have a relationship with him, then actually the most important thing in life is to have a relationship with Jesus. And you may not know it now, but I really believe it's true. An early theologian said, we all have a hole in our heart and it's God-shaped. And often we chase things and chase after things to try and fill that hole, but actually the hole that can only be filled by God. Now, you might be thinking, no, I don't feel like I have a hole in my life at all. I'm quite happy. I can't want to say just you wait. Like life is going to hit you, and even the best things in life that we value now, which are important things like relationships with people and whatever you have that you enjoy now that God gives you, yeah, great, they're fantastic. But at some point, you're going to get hit, and you're going to get hard, and all of us will at different times. And then the questions are going to come, what do I do with that? Who's going to walk me through that when my most important human relationships fail me, when my most valued job or my most valued assets fall apart? Who's not going to fail me then? Who's not going to judge me then? Who's going to still accept me? And really it boils down to, for me as a follower of Jesus, is Jesus. And so having that actually it's like an anchor in my life. So I kind of want to say it's so great that you for those person asking the question that I think I have it all together without Jesus. What does Jesus add? So I guess I want to say, well, Jesus is actually probably something you ought to consider as possibly the most valuable thing you could have in your life. And secondly, everything you value now, have a think about how permanent it might be, or how fragile it might be if things get really bad. And what are you going to cling to then? Because there is a God who loves you, and you can cling to him, and he will never fail you.
Thanks, Pete. And along that line, if one of the questions is, if actions and doing good isn't what God wants, then what do I need to do to have a relationship with him?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I kind of left it in the air, right? God doesn't want us to do anything in order to please him. And the reason is because we can't possibly do enough to please God. Even if we could do as much good as we can, how can we ever even outbalance the bad things that we do? And if God is completely perfect, how could he ever get there? Well, the good news is God doesn't expect us to, because we can never get there anyway. And so God has done it all already for us. So the Bible says that how we get into a relationship with God and how we please him is not by what we do, but what he's done. And that word is, funnily enough, your name, Grace. It's grace. Grace means undeserved gift. So what God is doing is saying, I've got a gift for you. It's free. So what do we need to do? Well, if someone gives you a gift and it's an extravagant gift, say one of Chris's clients, business is failing, in heaps of debt, millions of dollars, and someone is willing to come and say, look, I'm going to pay your debt for you, right? I'm going to wipe out your $10 million debt. All your credit cards canceled, like the debt's canceled. What do they need to do? Well, in some sense, they don't need to do anything because they can't meet their debt, but they still have to do something, because if someone offers them that debt-free deal and they don't accept it, then they're still going to be in debt, right? When someone gives you a gift, it's not yours until you take it, which means you've got to take them at their word. You've got to trust them, and with God, you've got to take him at his word. You've got to trust him, and you've got to live in, accept that relationship. You've got to receive it. So he holds out the gift to everyone. The gift doesn't cost you anything, but unless you receive it and trust in him, it's also not yours. So that's what we have to do. Not by doing good, not by trying to earn our way to God, but by saying, yes, please, I want that. And I want to live my life accepting that free gift that you give me.
Right. And just following in that conversation as well, and actually this is for both Pete and Chris, say after tonight or through this whole period of self-reflection, a person realize what is really important to them, Jesus and relationships and acceptance by God and family. But then when lockdown eases and life gets busy, that might well get thrown out the window. What we think we want to head into versus the busyness that comes with life. So the question is, how can we make lasting changes to our lives and make sure that we continue prioritizing well when life gets busy again?
Why don't you go first, Chris?
I think when we look at, I think Pete starts really well about this isn't like a New Year's resolution kind of phase or hype and things like that. I think one of the best scenarios of thinking about this is really it's a marathon, not a sprint. And as cliched as that sounds, it's so true that a lot of this is very community based, and you're going to need people around you. And if there's anything that we talked about tonight is that even though this is like, I guess like the topic of just new beginnings and new reflections, like we also have to consider the fact that if a second wave comes along with another shutdown happens, I mean, we could essentially be living that again. And for others, it could be a second chance to really play it out right and kind of live through that in relationship and in connection. So I think first and foremost is really take what you can from tonight, take what Pete said, and really like just savor those relationships and connections.
I don't have anything better to add. I think Chris has nailed it. So, you know, yeah, I think it's hard. Changes are hard. I think we need to keep remembering how fragile life is. And I think this has hit us more than anything else, certainly in my lifetime, in most of yours. And it's going to continue to hit us. Recession is going to be deep and long and painful. And that's, you know, that's just the economic consequences. So I suspect we'll be constantly reminded of it. But yeah, conversations, keeping each other accountable, community is really important. It's one of the great things I love about church is it's not ultimately about the building. It's actually about the people, and that's why we've been able to meet without a building. We're not going to be able to go into the building, but the people have actually made some deep connections. That really, really helps. So if you want to get connected, just let us know. We'd love to help you.
Yeah, and thanks, Chris and Peter. We actually have